And there's so many people that I personally know, good friends that have had very credible sightings. And after researching the book, doing all that and talking to these people, I mean, I'd come to the conclusion that I can't prove what these people saw, and I don't know exactly what it is, but they certainly saw something. That they can't all be lying, you know, and people throw out all these explanations or theories about what it actually is. It was a circus train that wrecked and apes ran into the forest. The moonshiners had created this monster because they wanted to keep people out of the stills. I'm like, you know, and I go into my book a lot of this, that it was actually Black Panthers. Not the group, but, you know, four-legged which Black Panther is a whole cryptid problem unto itself, mystery. But yeah, I mean, so now there's Black Panthers, and they're walking upright, imitating Bigfoot. So it's, you know, people have a lot of fun theories and stuff, but I really did the research to kind of decide, is there a train wreck? And you'll be interested to find the conclusions is what I found. But again, even if you threw out some of these, you threw out half these sightings, you threw out 3/4 of these sightings, if only a few people saw what they saw, and they saw some creature in the distance right here on Boggy Creek that we have never identified, that is unknown, that has managed to live in these backwoods and only occasionally come out and be curious enough and to be spotted by a person, then it still exists, you know, and there's still that possibility, as long as there's no way to prove it's not. And I think dedicated researchers and still looking into the phenomenon, we can find some answers. And at the very least, it's a great, compelling story. It's fascinating, whether the thing's flesh and blood or not. It's still a cool, fascinating story. And I think we can all agree here that we like mysteries and the possibility of conspiracies and you know, cover-ups and aliens. Are they visiting or are they not?
Has there been any, because there has been some association of the UFO phenomenon with Bigfoot. I was wondering if that has happened with this.
Right. I haven't found any reports where people specifically had sightings of the Fouke monster that they associated with any UFO activity, but certainly, yes, in the Bigfoot research at large, there is, you know, theories about UFOs, and, you know, I always say, you know, the plausibility of UFOs, I definitely believe that could be a real thing, but whether they're letting loose hairy apes to run through the woods, that doesn't make any sense. But you know, I was like, why would they do that? But those are certainly theories, you know. So okay, you got a question?
There's a major railroad that goes east and west, and I know it goes through Texarkana and round over to Hot Springs and all, but you'll be going through there, and you'd think over the years, I imagine these workers that get out and work the tracks, I bet they might have seen some.
Yeah.
Some of the workers are pretty.
Yeah, there is some lot of railroads, because Texarkana, because of the proximity to the Red River, back when this area was being founded in the 1700s and 1800s, Texarkana was a great hub of distribution because the lumber industry was huge down there. And so the waterways and the railroads, there was so many railroads converging in Texarkana back then that you had an influx of a lot of people moving, and you had a lot of these guys out.
Bigfoot craze in the 70s, because I know there were a lot of books that came out like in 74 and 75 and, you know, on into the late 70s. Was this before, or had some of these books already, or talk about Bigfoot, become part of the nomenclature before this came out?
It kind of preceded a lot of the major stuff. The famous Patterson-Gimlin film, you know, that came out in '67, and it was shown on limited television, but it really wasn't until really the mid-'70s, I would say, when that stuff is really just out there. And you had some other movies being made Bigfoot type movies that started coming out in '75, Mysterious Monsters, and Creature from Black Lake came out in 1976, which was another cool movie that kind of relates to this whole thing. It was shot in out on Cattle Lake on the Louisiana side. So yeah, the Legend of Boggy Creek was just right on the cusp of that becoming a real phenomenon in the '70s, because the '70s was the Bigfoot heyday. I think it's almost getting to that point now, even bigger, but back then there was a real rush on just all the unexplained stuff. Bermuda Triangle's coming out, all those shows, In Search Of, they cover the Honey Island Swamp Monster and the Yeti, and those things are just starting to be known on a wide basis, and so the Legend of Boggy Creek was just ahead of its time.
What was the Lake Worth monster? I've not heard that before.
Yeah, that was kind of a similar type thing in 1969, right? 69, Craig? In '69 over in Lake Worth, and they several people had sighted this Bigfoot-like creature, and so it was kind of like the whole Fouke monster thing, just on a smaller scale. Well, I think food supply could play into that, because you just have it entirely, and the question is, and people ask this a lot, do you think the Fouke monster is related to Bigfoot? This is one, that first sighting we talked about, the Ford house where the hand comes through, and they had to confront it, attack the guy, and he ends up in the hospital. Well, right from the get-go, he had a bad rap, the creature, the family of creatures, was associated with somebody getting in the hospital, and of course the Legend of Boggy Creek really plays that up, because that's the climax scene in the movie. If you go back and watch it now, you'll see how they just milked that Ford incident, and rightly so. It had all the parts,
after he got shot at, though.
Yeah, and
He'd be a little PO'd,
Hospital's better than the funeral home, because he was outclassed.
That's right. He was lucky that saw that out.
I was going to say, up there, they shoot first and ask questions later.
That's right.
But they must be pretty bad shots.
That's what I say. Like Willie Smith said, he shot at it like a dozen times. I'm like, he did the worst shot in Fouke, or he was hitting the moonshot.
Yeah.
He was an interesting character, this Willie Smith, and he's in the movie. And I know his son. You go up to the coffee shop up in Fouke at the Monster Mart. It's funny too, because you go sit up there for a while. You can just sit there and drink a coffee. It's not 10 minutes before you hear somebody talk about the Fouke monster. They bring it up.
They say Monster Mart?
It's called the Monster Mart. It's a little gas station, a convenience store, a Crummie's. But they have a painting of the creature, a mural on the side of the building and inside. Actually, since my book came out, it's kind of gotten them inspired. The whole town is actually inspired by all this, and there's been people, my book sells like crazy out of that place. I go up there now, the whole town's like, hey man. When I first go up there, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna write a book, and I was trying to find people, and they're like, I had to kind of earn their trust, because I was an outsider, I'm gonna look in on this, that, people have made fun of them over the years, so I had to convince them I was writing a serious approach. I'm neutral, I'm just presenting the case. People will make up their own minds. I'm not trying to paint you as crazy or anything else. It's just, here's the facts. I'm a journalist. I'm laying it out. Once I got there, they realized I kept returning, and I wasn't going to let it drop, I wasn't going to leave them alone, and I was serious. And they kind of gained my trust, and that's when they started calling people, and they're like, you need to come down here and tell Lyle your story. He's a good guy. It's good. Some of the older people would send their son down there to check me out first. Like, are you the scout to say it's okay? And they're like, yeah, my mom won't come down. And they would eventually do it. So it's very interesting unto itself just how I had to research this. But now the Monster Mart, I go in there and I always joke, yeah, I can get free Cokes at the Monster Mart. I'm big time, I feel good about bringing my part of this. I love the movie so much. You can see by the way I talk about it. It's cool to be able to contribute to the history of this and kind of raise some new awareness to people who maybe not know the whole story, or to a new generation that has never seen the movie that might read the book and then go back and watch the movie. So it's cool to be a part of that history.
You know, in my opinion, back then they sort of passed it off as being hokey, but the filter that you provide with your book and what you've lectured on today, it's caused me to go back and sort of rethink that whole concept, because they had locals acting, but yet it turned out to be it was all based on their witnessing and just trying to get the story out. I think that's really cool.
And that's the thing. I found that a lot of people say, oh, that was a couple of sightings in the movie. It was based on real sightings, and all the rest was made up. It totally wasn't. I went scene by scene and went back and researched to find the core of the sighting. Where did that come from? In my book, I have a side-by-side thing that will tell you what the scene is and what it was actually based on. And almost everything in there was based on a real sighting that a real person reported seeing.
Wow.
And I was like, so while it looks kind of hokey and they dramatize it and play it up in the movie, sure. But at the core of all this, it was based on what people were really seeing. It's fascinating.
That's the difference between that guy and Hollywood. That would have been jazzed up if it had
Right.
been full-time Hollywood.
And look at all Hollywood's new Bigfoot movies.
Yeah.
They're terrible. And this guy could do this, and it's
Tom
still...
Cruise would have been in it with a hair suit on.
I think you'd have had a whole bunch of bodies.
Well, all over the place with pulley poles and pulls.
Yeah. Any more questions?
That's,
This is not a question, but a comment. But I've watched the movie. A friend gave it to me a while back, and of course, we always thought of it as being kind of a campy version of some Bigfoot sightings. But you go back and watch it, and it's really the template is there for which now you see on the History Channel. There's a certain amount of reenactments. There's a certain amount of eyewitness interviews and narration. And if you go watch Ancient Aliens or Monster Quest, it's very similar to the template he used, and it's really quite watchable. I mean, if you, I'm going to tell anybody that it's not as you don't have to be half lit to watch it. There were many times we were.
It's enjoyable on both levels.
In other words, it's a class O pseudo documentary.
But you're right. I mean, you wouldn't. It's surprising how influential this is, and you don't think about it. But yeah, it is the template for half those cryptozoology shows going on, and like movies like the Blair Witch Project. If you remember that, those guys say straight out, we wanted to make a movie like The Legend of Boggy Creek. Yeah, and if you look at it, the reason it's so scary is because it looks like a documentary. When I saw it in the drive-in, and I don't know if anybody else thought this too when they were young, I was like, I couldn't understand how did they have the camera there at the exact time? You know what I'm saying? I was like, I remember my little kid brain like, I'm working on this. I'm like, man, this guy is amazing. and it scared the crap out of me too, because it looks so real. It looked like a documentary, and that's why it works, and that's why movies like, how many horror movies now with the shaky cameras and they make it pretend like it's real footage? Charles Pierce did this in 1972. He did it himself. Guerrilla filmmaking, no pun intended. He was doing it, and it's just the movie just doesn't get enough respect, I think.
now everybody's got a camera, and nobody brought any pictures in of him recently of the monster.
No,
Phones, cameras. A lot of UFO things come in off the telephone cameras.
Yeah, unfortunately. But UFOs are...
Now that's one thing. You see something 7 foot and tall, you might be a little difficulty getting that camera to work for you.
You got to clear...
While you're running as fast as
It's hard to shoot back over your shoulder. They probably don't have cell phones out there.
No, they probably got a camera on their double barrel shotgun.
That double barrel with a camera mounted on the top.
Yeah.
I'll shoot you with something.
Put that little red dot on it.
Yes.
Have you already mentioned when the last actual sighting was of the...
I did mention that in my book, I go up to 2010, but since my book has come out and I'm apparently the hub of all things Boggy Creek, of course, sightings are coming in, and I investigated one that occurred in 2011 in September last year in which a girl saw it run across a road down there, and I went up and interviewed her and kind of got all Monster Quest on it, and did an investigation. But her sighting was extremely credible. She had a friend who had kind of corroborated her story, and very, very interesting. And so sightings still go on. I've got my website, falconmonster.net. I've tried to do an archive of a lot of things. I've got a lot of other photos that aren't in my book and other information and old news reports. I just was on the TV in the Shreveport Channel 3 this is the 40th year anniversary of Legend of Boggy Creek, 72 to 2012. And so they did a feature on me in the book and the movie. So man, they're still running it. I mean, this is a news report on Channel 3. They were running it 3 times a day in the morning show and the nightly news. And, it's still going on.
What is the area of the sightings that were they all pretty compact within a few square miles, or were they spread out over several hundred square miles, or
spread out? I kind of did some research within 50 miles of Falk, figuring it's a creature. I mean, it will roam at least 50 miles. I mean, any animals can roam, especially big predators and things. So, I've got, there's within a 50-mile range, more than like 100 sightings, and all the ones that were in Jonesville were in a small area, Falk, up and around.
But Jonesville and Falk are only about 10 or 15 miles apart, aren't they?
Yeah, not even that, 5 miles. But they're spread out within a general collected area, but they do, as you go on down the Sulphur River, you've got sightings that move on back into there, and then you just got a place where a lot of people don't go. I don't have any from like in the middle of the Sulphur River Wildlife Management Area, but I mean, your chances of seeing them there are just, and we were talking about, everybody's got a cell phone.
Yeah.
It's not that easy to get a shot.
No, not when you're a little nervous about it.
Of something, because your sighting
Not that
is
long.
so quick. And you may think you got your stuff ready. I was out hog hunting not long ago. I've always got my camera because I don't know what I'm going to see, and even taking a good wildlife photography. I'm sitting there and I'm right on this riverbed, and a beaver comes swimming up, and he gets up and he's like, just from me to you, right there. I'm like, National Geographic shot, where's my camera? and it's just right there, and by the time I get that camera, boom, in the water. This is a beaver, and he was right there, and I do have my camera, but I don't have my camera like this.
Right.
And there just goes to show you, we know beavers exist, but had we never seen a beaver, I'm trying to tell you, I saw this thing with big teeth, and he was, you'd be going, whatever, dude, had a flat tail. See, and you apply that to the same logic behind a Bigfoot creature. It's there a split second, you saw it, you didn't expect it.
They don't stay out there very long. They're not going to pose.
They're not posing.
When they slap that tail, it sounds like somebody threw a battery in the pond.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
Pretty loud.
What gets me, in the ones that you see, they had time to say smile before they took the picture.
If you could coax him out, he'd be a first-round draft pick in the NFL, I'll tell you that. Cowboys could use him.
That's right. Yeah, they really.
Or NBA for that matter. Or hockey, you name his sport.
7 foot, he probably.
He could name his prize.
WWL. He'd be a winner, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a great idea for a new ad campaign up there in that area, messing with the Falk Monster.
Yeah. Well, there's a funny, if you go to my falconmonster.net website, in 2007, the Keep Arkansas Beautiful Commission used the Falk Monster as their spokesperson. And it was very clever, because what they did was they pretended like there was one Falk Monster, and he had been a movie star back in the 70s. And they showed him with a receding hairline and all that. And he looked a little older, and he's like, and it was to a campaign against litter. And this thing showed on CNN and all over Arkansas. And they talked to him, they're like, and they say, actor from The Legend of Boggy Creek. Very clever. The way
Second
they,
term in Congress probably by now.
the way they used that, and again, it just underscores that, wow, it's a big enough thing that they would use this.
My God.
And people expected to know, The Legend of Boggy Creek, we know the God monster. Really cool, really cool. You can see that on our site if you want to look at it. It's pretty neat. Any more questions? Yeah.
Is there any evidence of how he may have adapted to his environment in terms of structures built, safety, protection, possibly how they get food, those kinds of things? Encampments?
I don't have a lot of reports from the area that specifically that say people have found structures, but in Bigfooting at large, they certainly have theories, and they find strange structures made of sticks that some people theorize that these creatures make as a place to sleep. Each area, depending on where these sightings are, as far as food source, you just have to look at what's available. Roots, tubers, berries, a lot of berries in there. Fish, hogs, they pretty much, a creature that big would kind of have to be omnivorous, just opportunistic. And, so certainly you have a lot of researchers doing studies on specific areas that have the food source and then theorize what they could possibly eat, a huge creature like this. But I think in most cases where you have, out in this area, there's more than 42 inches of rainfall a year on average. It's rich. There's things growing. There's certainly things to eat if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're eating, and you've lived there and adapted. So they have to adapt to the environment, and if they exist, then certainly they have, and there's a food source for them.
Any more questions? All right, thank you very much.